Hello and welcome back to Movie Husbands. Today we'll be reviewing In the Heights. Directed by jonmchu and based off the Broadway musical from Lin-Manuel Miranda, In the Heights portrays a city block in Washington Heights on the precipice of personal and political change. The Ensemble Cast stars Anthony Ramos, Corey Hawkins, Stephanie Beatrice, and many others. So Jeffrey, what did you think of In the Heights?
So I should preface this that I always kind of have a blind spot for musicals, and I should say it's not musicals' fault, it's my fault. It's a genre that I just have a lot of trouble getting down with, like this idea that you're talking to somebody and you suddenly break out into happy song and your whole neighborhood starts singing. I've never been able to understand it. I've never particularly liked it, even though there are individual musicals that I kind of like. I thought In the Heights was decent. I don't think that, I certainly wasn't blown away by, I think, any of it. I thought it was okay and serviceable.
Okay, well, I definitely disagree with that. I really enjoyed myself in this movie, as I think you would imagine that I would have.
Why?
Because I like musicals. I love musicals. I thought this movie was just so lively. There was just so much energy about it. I loved that it was a beautiful kind of expression of culture and the location, Washington Heights in New York City. It gave me this film did such a great job of giving this wonderful 90s vibe. This 90s movie magic this movie had to me.
Yeah, you're actually touching on something that I really like about the movie, which is how it's exploring this culture. It actually reminds me of Do the Right Thing a little bit, the first half of Do the Right Thing, how you start to get to know all of these people that live on this block and you start to kind of like them in their own kind of funny caricature kind of way. I think this film did that really well, exploring the food, just their daily working lives, their daily struggles, how they're all kind of a unit with one another, that they're kind of this functioning body within this block, that they're all a part of this great culture that you don't see portrayed in musicals or in film very often. So that part of it I actually really liked, and I thought the characters were fairly dynamic, so that was all good stuff.
One of the great things about Lin-Manuel Miranda in here, and it's something that he's replicated with many of the projects he's done, especially Hamilton, is that so much of the dialogue is written into song. So you'll have other musicals that you'll watch, and it'll be very heavily dialogued, and then you'll get a song break 8 or 9 times throughout a play or a movie. Where in this film, the majority of it, I would say roughly 90%, is song. And I love how he takes dialogue and he puts it into music, especially the way that it flows, the way that it matches the beat with a lot of the objects that are being moved or the actions that people are taking. It's so well choreographed around the music. And I thought that was just such a stellar job done on that.
I think he's a very dynamic lyricist, for sure, and a very dynamic songwriter. His music has a lot of energy, and there is so much snap and intelligence to his lyrics that I agree. I mean, that is the main reason I think to like this musical. And you see him grow into Hamilton in this musical because he wrote this one first for Broadway. And Hamilton obviously is kind of his masterpiece in a way, and we'll see what he does beyond that. To get to one of the things that I don't like about this movie, I think that it has a great sense of character and place, especially of place. We were talking about the block and everything, and I think that's one of the best parts of the movie. I don't think it has a great story, and I don't think the story is infused with the songs that well. The songs are actually pretty good from a character perspective, but what happens from the beginning to the end, I don't think is very much. And that's kind of okay, but I don't think the film ever acknowledges that in a significant way or justifies that nothing is really happening. I felt like everybody's story was person wants to leave, person does or doesn't leave. I think that's most of the story.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a problem with that. I think the movie was treating these stories as if that was the story, is that everybody has this dream and everybody's trying to figure out how to achieve their dream. And some of that requires going away and some of that requires staying for different people.
I guess you're not confusing, but you're conflating story and character, and many times those are the same things, right? So I agree with you that the character depth that's shown within the songs is pretty good. I just don't think that translates into a well-told story very well. I don't think the characters are enough. To quote one of our friends, actually, that to have such good characters, sometimes you forget to tell a story. I think that's what this movie is doing.
It's a very simple story. I'll give you that I think it is a very simple story. I do think this movie is very bloated in telling that story. The movie is way too long for the story that it's telling. But I don't think the focus of that is supposed to be the story. I think it's just the characters, what they're striving and dreaming for, and how they go about achieving that. And I don't think you need more than that in this type of movie. I think that movie knows that it's going for that, and that's all it's catering to.
I think you do need more.
Okay. I don't know why you do.
To go to the length a little bit is something interesting because I do think this movie is way too long. But it's kind of riding on all of the things you're talking about for a while, for a long time actually. For maybe the first hour and a half, I'm watching this and I'm enjoying the characters, I'm enjoying the choreography, I'm kind of enjoying the culture, and then it just keeps going, you know? And I really don't like the last half hour of this movie at all. Maybe we'll talk about that later, but I just think at a certain point, you know, it's just an embarrassment of riches. That's not even the right term, actually. It's too much of a good thing.
I understand how somebody could feel like the movie was dragging a little bit and doing, like, repeating the same formula throughout it. But that's what I enjoyed so much about it, that it stuck to, like, its identity. Like, I felt like it kind of built an identity about it, and it kind of held to that throughout the whole thing. I liked that it didn't really stray away from that.
Let's get into that second hour.
Okay.
Because that second hour is where I think this movie has some offensively dumbed down politics. There are a couple scenes that feel so perfunctory about issues that are so important that I found them kind of borderline offensive. It's almost like they forgot it and they put it as a post-it note into the movie that, oh, we gotta talk about Dreamers for a moment, we have to talk about immigration for a moment. It's there for 3 seconds. I'm not really sure that the movie needs to be all about that, but it did feel tacked on in this kind of like Lifetime movie after school special way that I really didn't like.
Lifetime movie after school special?
Yeah, go rewatch that scene. The scene after the rally. That is a bad scene.
They didn't really dive too much into the emotion of these things, but that's not what the movie's trying to do. The movie's trying to be uplifting and fun and following your dreams. That's the point of the movie. Its point is not to get bogged down in all the drama of these specific subject matters.
It doesn't need to.
Even though they're heavy subject matters.
But if you're gonna speak about politics at all, I think you should do it the service of it. You know, if you want to say it's kind of subtly there under the surface, which it is for the first hour and a half of the movie, that's kind of okay. But once you sort of have a speech about dreamers and you make it so surface level, you kind of owe more to your audience.
I could see how you would want that from the movie that you're thinking it should be, but I don't think it's that type of movie. Everybody has these dreams, and I feel like all these characters' dreams are built from the very beginning. We learn about the teenager from the very beginning that he's going to this rally, so we know it's coming. We're not aware that we find out later, spoiler alert, and I could just bleep that out, I guess. But we're not aware of that. And so when we find out, you know, I do feel like they treat it a little surface level and it's kind of easy, but I felt like it was also done purposely like that because I felt what I like about that moment that it didn't feel too preachy to me. If I felt like they spent more time on it, it would have come across
alarmingly preachy to me. Why have such complex characters and complex relationships if you're not going to treat the political issues with the same complexity?
I'm not saying they're all treated with the same. I'm not saying that. I don't think their narratives are very complex. I think their narratives are pretty simple.
The narrative between the father and the daughter is fairly complex.
I don't think the movie treats it as very complex.
No, but it is, but it's not treating it that way.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. This movie knows that it's doing that. It has so many characters. It not only has so much time, because you can only go so deeply with every character and every issue that's fit into this movie. This movie has a lot packed into it. It has the hairdresser who wants to move to the other side of town and get a bigger place. So there's so many characters. This is really an ensemble piece, and so this movie has to fit so much in so little time that you can't get so super deep into everything.
We're not talking about that scene I'm talking about could be the same length of time and be done 3 times as good. I don't think this is a length issue. I think it's a complexity of thinking issue.
All right, well, let's move on from here because there's a lot of the other things that I want to talk about.
Yeah, so the last half hour, everybody starts getting uber sentimental and they all have tears in their eyes and it's really aggravating. And suddenly everything works out. It's great.
I loved that. It made me tear up.
Oh, I didn't.
I teared up definitely towards the end with Unavi in particular.
The last shot of this movie really annoyed me.
Oh my gosh. It wasn't that bad.
It's really rough. I don't know.
Anyways, so I do want to talk about one of the really brightest spots of this movie, and that's the abuela, because she was fantastic in this movie. And I think her song was one of the best moments in this film.
I agree.
Yeah. And I don't want to get too deep into why it's the best song because I don't want to spoil anything. But that was one of the most fantastic moments in this movie.
I agree. It's my favorite part of the movie. That and the pool scene. My two
would
favorite
be
parts.
that would be the most the best part of the movie.
Well,
for
no,
you.
it's tender and it's complex. It's not just because I think people are gonna watch that and assume that I want some like down on the dumps movie, and I don't think that moment is down on the dumps at all. Actually, I think that it's very wonderfully inspirational in many ways. This would just feel so much more momentous to me if I was seeing it on stage and not in a film. Especially there's that kind of montage about an hour and a half through where I mentioned this is probably where intermission is. Where they kind of go around to all the different characters and they all have like a moment to sing within the same song. I don't know. I just felt like I could see that working really well on stage. And I don't know if it worked as well in film because I was jumping around so much and I couldn't really feel part of the song. It reminded me a lot of actually the Tonight montage in West Side Story. But I just don't think... I think it's a very good montage. I just can't really see it working in film. That was one of the few times that I think the medium got in the middle of it being a great scene. A scene where that doesn't happen is the pool scene. The pool scene is great. I actually don't know how they did that on stage. They probably did it in some way that I just can't think about because I don't really think about it that way. But that's a great scene.
Yeah, that was one of the things I really loved about this movie was that it really it really allowed from being a stage play into a film, just like it so broadly opened up what the movie, like the benefits of filmmaking could give this material, especially in showcasing Washington Heights and kind of like the vibe that you get and the feeling of New York City. Like it's all there and it all feels so real, which I loved about this movie. I don't necessarily agree with you in terms of I felt like
Shocking.
I felt like it held the whole way. Like to me, like I really loved how the medium took this source material to the next level. If there's one criticism that I did have about this is that they put these little overlays during some of the songs. It didn't happen all the time, but there was one moment where all the guys are kind of singing and walking to the pool, and these little pop-ups happen, like little drawings as they're dancing.
Oh, I kind of like that actually.
I didn't really like it because I thought it cheapened just what the actors were doing, because my attention wasn't drawn to what the actors were performing. It was attracted to all the little overlays.
I have to say, I thought that scene was well integrated, but I understand why you think that way.
I think it would have worked better for me if it was in play more during and throughout the movie, but it kind of just
It is odd, actually, now that you mention that it only happens in one scene.
But no, it happens in a couple scenes. It happens in a couple songs after that, but that was the first time it happened, and it was already like 30 minutes into the movie, so I felt like it was just out of place at that moment. And then when it disappeared and it came back a couple times in the future, I just felt like it was out of place again. I felt like if it was done from the very beginning, it would have been a stylistic thing, but after that, I felt like it was unnecessary. Do you have anything to say before I continue?
No.
I really did like this movie more than you. Anyways, so I think another great thing I loved about this movie was just the ensemble cast in this film entirely.
They're great.
Every single person, every actor, every performer, every background actor and performer in this movie was fantastic. All these people were absolute perfection. I was watching the background dancers during some of these scenes, and they just had just as much energy as the people, the main characters. And I thought that gave this movie just so much energy.
I also think everybody is playing a character all the time, which is really great. There are even like some bit parts, like people that are in the film for like 10 seconds that they encounter on the street or something, that are so their own character. And even the ensemble cast, everybody always feels in character. They always feel themselves. They're like a living, breathing person with all of these, funny lines and their own kind of complex moral dilemmas and etc. I don't know. That was one of the best parts.
I think kind of tying into that is just like the way the dialogue was written is that I would love to see this movie again because there are so many little things built in. Because the dialogue is very fast-paced in its musical sense when they're speaking to one another and they're having conversations back and forth. And there's so much built into those conversations and so many little details. It's also really quippy and funny at times. Like there's these moments that I just busted out laughing, and they also hit every single time. There wasn't really a joke that was made that I didn't get or I didn't find funny.
So you ready to go to grades?
Yes, I'm ready to go to grades. I give this movie an A-. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I don't care what you think. This movie was great.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing how different we are.
Oh my gosh. I think everybody should go out and see this movie. I thought it was
I think you should see it too, actually. But sorry to interrupt you.
I thought thanks for interrupting me. I thought this was a wonderful celebration of, heritage and community and it had such a great vibe about it. It was so energetic, and I loved the music. I loved the choreography. All the actors were fantastic. I really enjoyed myself.
As a grade, I give this a C+. I think that there are a lot of things that are great about it. I think the choreography is great. I think the actors are great. The music's great. The lyrics are great. I think the story is not so great. I think the politics are wobbly and borderline offensive, and maybe like you would see something more intelligent on Twitter, which is like, and that's what I think.
This movie is so much better than average.
I gave it a plus. A C is average, so I gave it an average plus.
The work these people put into this movie is so much better than the grade you're
the
giving it.
choreography and the music is great. I think the message and the thematic stuff is not good, and I think that's huge. I think that's a huge thing. What somebody walks away from this film thinking is incredibly important, and I think they've just really fumbled it.
But this movie was, whatever. We've done it enough. We've done it enough. I can't. We're just gonna have to leave it at that. All right, and that's it for our review of In the Heights. In the Heights is now in theaters and streaming on HBO Max. As always, we hope you enjoyed this review, and we'll see you next time.